What I don't like is that students or parents of students, martial arts has become for some of us, it's a lifelong thing. We would never give up or walk away from it in its entirety. But for a lot of people, it's an expendable income thing. And, for me, martial arts is more important than having a cell phone. So if I can't afford to send my kid to martial arts class, why can I afford them to have a new Xbox game every week, or a cell phone bill on a smartphone? I understand the necessity of a cell phone, but smartphones with all the apps and everything, to me, there's something lost in that, where it's become more of an expendable income, like going to the movies. If we can afford it, we'll do it, and as opposed to cutting other things that maybe aren't necessary, because the martial arts gives you so much more than just going to a school. Time to spend individually with students. Never feel like I have enough time spent. There's been classes I've walked away from and felt horrible about how the class went. The students loved it. They thought it was a great class, and anybody watching it thought it was a great class. But I've walked away feeling that I've let them down, because maybe I got individual time with a student for a very short amount of time. Because when your classes get bigger, you spend it more on everybody and critiquing everybody and picking out things for each individual student, but you don't really get that individual one-on-one very often. And that's the hardest thing about teaching. I think it's very misunderstood. People think a lot of it is violent or promotes violence, and so they won't start themselves, or they won't get their children involved until they come in and are basically explained what the martial arts actually gives you, besides the ability for self-defense. That's only a small component of it. There's so many other great things that you get from the martial arts, both physically through physical fitness and mentally through your discipline and perseverance and all of those things. I do, actually. Mostly for those benefits, other than just the techniques that we've been talking about, because you lose it. It falls so much in line with what the schools are used to, anyway, try to do with students. They try to teach them more than just to be able to regurgitate the curriculum onto a test. There's a lot of values that you pick up in school at that impressionable age that last you for your lifetime. I'm not one that necessarily believes that we shouldn't have dodgeball anymore, because it doesn't favor the weaker kid or whatever. I grew up in dodgeball. At times I was the weaker kid, at times I was the dominant kid. You learn to get through that, because that's a part of learning how to fail and learning how to overcome, step up, and pick yourself up and move on, to persevere. And martial arts can help teach those things in school. Probably the older you get, the more you know that there is to learn, and so it's hard to lose interest, because you're always learning. After 29 years of training in martial arts, I still learn every time I step out onto the mat. And it may not be learning about a particular technique every time, although that happens frequently. But sometimes it's learning how to be a better teacher, or learning how to interact with students, or teach a certain type of student has to be taught a different way because of how they learn. And that's an ever-changing, ever-learning process. Defense is important. I've over the years really gone with self-improvement as a key area, because everybody learns, develops differently, and everybody takes something different. It means martial arts being a lifelong process means something different to everybody. And so over the years, I've learned to recognize that it means something different. So that's what I want to provide to that student, is to help garnish and help that flourish. So it's really become more of an overall, all-encompassing kind of thing for me than just specifically competition or focusing on form, technique, or focusing on self-defense. To me, those are components of the martial art, and every student gets something different out of it. It's a matter of identifying what that is. I think what MMA in and of itself is wonderful. I think that I'm a traditionalist as far as what you get from the martial arts as being a lifelong thing, and I don't know if a lot of the MMA training encompasses the things that I look for in a martial art from a personal enrichment standpoint. Physically, absolutely, it's great because it's practical, it's usable from a self-defense standpoint. But from the other things that we look for, the discipline, yes, you'll get discipline in MMA if you're very disciplined, but it's not something that's directly taught. It's inferred. But I think it has brought a lot of people into the martial arts that wouldn't have normally come in because they've seen MMA and want to participate in something like that. And if there's no MMA school close, they'll get close to it as they can via other martial arts. So I think it has helped offshoot to other martial arts too. You know, I do use martial arts in law enforcement to control violent, aggressive people. I primarily use joint locks and pressure points for that. Some striking techniques, but never the jump spin, hook kicks, or anything like that I do in the school. Defensive tactics programs are loosely based, or get some basis from martial arts, whether it be through vascular neck restraints, we call them, or shoulder pins and things like that are jiu-jitsu related techniques from way back when, and straight armbar takedowns, things like that we can derive, that we teach frequently in Hapkido. Pieces of the martial arts get used a lot, technique-wise. Of course, the other parts that we've been talking about, the life journey part of martial arts, is probably even more important when you're in law enforcement.